Hello and welcome to the Deathcast. I am your host, author, and journalist Ian Todd, and I'd like to thank you for joining me as we prepare to take our third look at the life and crimes of Rodney Alcala. Before we get started, as always, I have the normal show notes. If you'd like to follow the show on social media, just search for the Deathcast, Deathcast Official, or Deathcast Podcast. If you'd like to help support the show, there's a couple of ways you can do this. First and foremost, you can go to your favorite podcast app and leave a 5-star review. You can also go to tinyurl.com/dcastpatreon, where for as little as $1.99 a month, you can get access to early ad-free shows, as well as exclusive content, just as friends of the show channel Anthony, Debbie, Samantha, Ruben, Adam, and Mike have done. Again, that's tinyurl.com/dcastpatreon, where you can get access to nearly 100 ad-free shows. Alright, now that all that's out of the way, find yourself a nice comfy chair, kick back and relax. I've got my coffee, I've got my cigarettes. Let's go into the crypt! We left off last time. Alcala had just been released from jail after his assault on 15-year-old Monique Hoyt. Because of this arrest, Alcala has to quit his job at the Los Angeles Times as a typesetter and photographer because one of the individuals that he was working with happened to be married to a Los Angeles police officer who informed her that her colleague had been arrested for rape. Naturally, this news spread all throughout the company, and Alcala was faced with no other choice other than to leave. Upon quitting the job, Alcala set about finding a new source of income, working odd jobs, as well as applying for photography positions, all to no avail. He also continued on with his photographing of various unknown women and men. Sometimes these were straight photographs. Oftentimes these were suggestive or outright sexually explicit photographs, with the individuals involved remaining as unknown entities up until this day. Some have speculated that Alcala was scared by this arrest and thus did not commit any further crimes. However, knowing serial killers, as we do here on this show, we know that more often than not, they go through periods of cooling off. I think that is more likely what was going on during the next few months of Alcala's life. He was in a cooling off period. He went through his homicidal phase. It didn't work. He ends up getting caught. The desire to kill is lessened. He's able to control his urges. It could also be, however, that he did commit crimes that we know nothing about. Again, Alcala is one of those who there's just no way of knowing the exact number of victims that he has. It's not until June of 1979 that we know with certainty Alcala is back on the prowl. Specifically, Wednesday, June 13th, Alcala attends a evening game of the Los Angeles Dodgers at Dodgers Stadium, which for the baseball fans out there was a 9-8 win for the Dodgers over the St. Louis Cardinals. At some point after 11 p.m., Alcala left the stadium proper, headed to the car park where his F10 Datsun was parked. Somewhere on his way to the car park, he encounters a young woman. This is 21-year-old Jill Marie Parenteau, who worked as a computer key punch operator. According to Jill's friend Catherine Franco, they encountered Alcala as he was buying a soda. The two of them bumped into each other, that is, Jill and Alcala, with both of their drinks spilling. Jill offers to buy Alcala a new drink, which he declines, instead buying Jill one, and the pair separate at this point. Catherine Franco would later state that the two of them had encountered Alcala on a number of occasions at various local clubs, and that he kind of struck them as odd. He was a little creepy, even though he tried to be very dapper and debonair. We know that Alcala followed the two of them from Dodgers Stadium, where Catherine dropped Jill off at her apartment. After a few minutes, Alcala takes a piece of nylon rope from his truck and approaches Jill's apartment, which is on the second floor and is accessed by a metal outside stairwell. We've all seen these kinds of stairwells. They have, an exterior light that illuminates the top landing of the stairwell. Alcala unscrews the light bulb so that he can operate in darkness. It's speculated that Alcala stood outside of the apartment on the landing watching Jill as she went about her business in the apartment for a few minutes, and when she disappeared into another area of the apartment, he forced the latch on the window and crawled inside. Now, in doing so, Alcala ends up cutting himself on this latch. And this is important as this DNA evidence is later going to be used to tie Alcala to Jill's murder, because sadly, this young woman does die. We know that Jill screamed at least once upon encountering Alcala in her apartment, although it does not appear that any of her neighbors heeded this, frantic cry for help. From the crime scene, it's speculated that Alcala used the nylon rope he had brought with him to whip Jill across the face, as there was a deep cut on her forehead. It's also speculated that, as with his other victims, he choked Jill into unconsciousness a number of times during the course of his assault, as, again, unfortunately, Jill was brutally sexually assaulted before he took her life with this nylon rope. He then posed Jill's body in the living room, using 3 pillows to prop her back up. The next day, when Jill does not come to work, an officer from the LAPD goes over to do a welfare check and discovers Jill inside of the apartment. In addition to murdering her, her head had been bashed in, with the skull and cheekbones fractured in several areas. She was found in this posed position that Alcala had left her in. Beside her body was a jewelry box that had been dumped on the floor. Fortunately, Jill's murder quickly goes cold, as the LAPD has no suspects who match this particular modus operandi. However, they did have the foresight to collect the blood sample that was found on the windowsill from Alcala, as well as a few drops of blood that had fallen inside of the apartment that did not match Jill's blood type. Unlike with his previous murders, Alcala really doesn't go through a cooling off period after murdering Jill. In fact, his next known victim will be a 12-year-old by the name of Robin Christine Samso, who goes missing on June 20th of 1979 from Huntington Beach, California, which is still in the LA County area. Now, some have speculated what caused Alcala to commit this particular crime. With many of Alcala's crimes, there is some form of rejection, whether real or perceived, that precedes him going and committing a crime. On this date of June 20th, he had gone to an interview at Knott's Berry Farm, which is a theme park in LA, to try and get a position as a full-time photographer. This interview apparently did not go very well, and not long afterwards, Alcala found himself over at Huntington Beach. Now, according to witnesses, Alcala started taking pictures of women and young girls in their bathing suits, with a number of them complaining about him. However, Alcala does not seem to have minded much. We know that at some point before 3 o'clock, Alcala was up on the boardwalk doing just such an activity, taking pictures of a group of young girls who happened to be roller skating. Alcala has taken these girls' pictures, and one of them confronts him, demanding to know what he is doing, who told him that he could take their pictures, and calling him a pervert. After this interaction, Alcala ends up down on the beach proper, where he notices two young girls playing in the sand. Alcala gives these two girls his normal spiel that he's a fashion photographer and he's looking for girls to take part in a photography contest. These two girls were 13-year-old Bridget Wilvert and 12-year-old Robin Samso. Unknown to Alcala, the two girls were there with Bridget's aunt, who interrupted this photography session as Alcala was attempting to get the girls' home addresses should they win this, big competition. Alcala quickly left the scene. Not long after this, the two girls made to leave the beach, unaware that Alcala was still in the area and was now watching them. He followed as they made their way to Bridget's house, where they quickly changed clothing. And the reason for the two girls leaving the beach was because Robin had a ballet class at 4 o'clock. Bridget lets her friend take her bicycle to the ballet class with the understanding that she'll return it afterwards. At some point on her trip to the ballet studio, Robin ends up encountering Rodney Alcala again, and he's able to convince Robin to get into the car, almost certainly with the promise of money if she'll allow him to shoot photographs of her, as well as drop her off at the ballet studio. So Alcala drives to the San Gabriel Mountains. Along the way, Robin ends up getting a nosebleed, which Alcala staunches with a handkerchief that he has. But something else also happens. Robin apparently realizes that she is in a very dangerous predicament and wets her pants. Some have stated that it was this wetting of the pants that threw Alcala into a frenzy when he discovered it after driving up Santa Anita Canyon Road. We know that Alcala was able to get Robin out of the station wagon up to an area that was frequented by both homeless people as well as teenagers looking to party, and that during the course of their interactions, Alcala smashed Robin in the face with his camera and that the force of this blow knocked Robin backwards onto some rocks where she struck her head. This actually is listed as her cause of death, blunt force trauma. It appears Alcala was unaware that the young girl had died, and he began to undress her. It was during the course of this undressing that he realized that Robin was in fact dead. However, I need to point out some sources state that Robin was raped, others that she had simply been undressed. Police records indicate that Robin, in fact, was raped. That this rape happened post-mortem, meaning after she was already dead. Whether Alcala realized the young girl was dead at the time he was raping her is unknown. However, it would not be outside the realm of possibility with a sexual predator such as Alcala to have known that she was dead and deciding to rape her anyways, as this would simply be an escalation of his mania, which we have seen many, many times before in other crimes, where a killer starts out with an MO, and by the time their killing spree is over, they have escalated the level of sadisticness that they display towards their victims. We also know that Alcala took a knife that he kept in his car and attempted to cut Robin's head off with it. When this did not work, he used a rock to smash her face in, and also that he had attempted to bury Robin's body. However, anyone that lives in California, has been to California, knows that many areas of the state, the soil is extremely poor and very, very rocky, and Alcala was unable to bury Robin's body. After this, he ends up going back to his station wagon. After leaving the scene of Robin's murder, Alcala drives to a scrapyard located off of Montecito Avenue, where he purchases carpets for the station wagon passenger side, as the ones that were there at this point were covered in blood from Robin's nosebleed as well as from the urine. We also know that he went to a nearby hardware store where he bought numerous items, including carpet glue, bleach, a gas can, rags, and rubber hose. After which Alcala drove to a nearby warehouse where he changed out the carpet. Alcala siphoned gas from the tank of the station wagon and used this to burn the carpeting which he had just cut out and replaced, along with Robin's backpack which had her clothing inside of it, 2 rolls of film that he had containing pictures of both her and Bridget. Now, what happens next is really speculation from law enforcement. It's believed that Alcala attempted to return to the crime scene as he realized that he had left a towel that had belonged to Robin, and which was spattered with her blood, as well as the knife that he had used to cut the girl's throat at the crime scene. And that during the course of making his way up there, Alcala had gotten lost. We do know with certainty that he ends up dropping Bridget's bicycle behind a thrifty drugstore in El Monte, after which Alcala went back to his apartment. Now that evening, June 20th, Robin's mother, concerned that her 12-year-old daughter was not home, contacted the Huntington Beach Police Department at 8:50 p.m. She let the Huntington Beach PD know that her daughter had not arrived to her ballet practice that the teacher had called at 5 to inform Robin's mother that she had not come to class that day. She also informs the police that she has spoken to Bridget and that Bridget gave her a rundown of their day, that she had lent Robin her bicycle, and also that she had contacted all of Robin's friends in an effort to locate her to no avail. Robin's mother, Marianne Fraser, also informs the police that she and her son have conducted a search of their neighborhood and that they are completely unable to find her. At which point, the officer who has heard about the stranger that Bridget and Robin had encountered earlier that day informs Robin's mother that she can come in the next morning and let the officer who handles missing persons cases know about Robin's disappearance. And for me, this was the absolute wrong thing for authorities to have done. However, that is the way that things were in the 1970s through much of the 1980s and even into the 90s and 2000s. Kids were seen as being runaways or as, having lost track of time, and their disappearances weren't given the attention that they warranted. Now, with things such as the Amber Alert, it is a much different story. Police departments are trained that when a parent calls in to report a missing child, whether or not that child has run away or simply lost track of time, they are to treat this as an abduction and to immediately go out and start searching for this child and broadcasting Amber Alerts across cell phones. But it wasn't that way at this point in time, 1979. Some have argued that as Robin was already dead, it's pitch black outside, it's doubtful that anything could have been done on that evening. However, I disagree with that, as it's very possible that with the information that Robin's friend Bridget had, they could have at least gotten a composite sketch of the man that she had encountered, which they do the next day when Robin's mother, Bridget Wilvert, and her aunt, Jackie Young, go to the Huntington Beach police, where Robin's mother completed a missing person report, and Bridget and her aunt helped an officer create a composite sketch of the man that they had encountered, which ends up bearing a striking resemblance to Rodney Alcala. Surprise, surprise. Afterwards, officers went out not only to see if they could locate Robin, but also to see if they could find any witnesses at the beach who could recall having seen the man suspected of having taken Robin. They were also looking for Bridget's bicycle, which it was thought, if they could find, might lead to Robin's location. In addition to this, copies of the sketch that had been drawn of the stranger on the beach were distributed throughout the area. We do know that Alcala almost immediately set about trying to alter his appearance somewhat, buying hair straightener in an attempt to make himself look different from the curly-haired individual depicted in this police sketch. Now, very little happens in the investigation for roughly about a week until June 26th of 1979, when police receive a phone call from a man claiming to be a probation officer. And this man states that he has seen the composite sketch that was done up of Robin Samso's alleged abductor, and that it bears an uncanny resemblance to a man who he used to be the parole officer This man's name was Rodney Alcala. This officer, who's at the end of his shift, writes the name down and informs the man that he will look into it the following morning. However, when this officer, Art Draws, who was the husband of the officer who had done up the composite sketch, Marilyn Draws, gets home and is settling down to have something to eat, he turns the television on and is stunned to hear in the background the show, The Dating Game, introducing the first bachelor by the name of Rodney Alcala. Upon seeing the face on the television screen, Officer Draws contacts a fellow detective from the Huntington Beach Police Department who also has just gotten off of work and asks him if he's watching television. This other officer states that he is in fact watching television. Draws is able to convince this officer, Robinson, to change channels until he finds The Dating Game. After seeing Alcala on television, Officer Draws informs Robinson that he believes that Alcala is the man responsible for Robin's disappearance, going on to recount the phone call he had received just prior to getting off of work for the evening. After getting off the phone with Draws, Officer Robinson contacts his partner, Sergeant Ron Jenkins, and instructs him to go over to the ABC studios to see if he can get a copy of that evening's Dating Game. And it's with this copy of the television show that Bridget Wilvert is able to identify Rodney Alcala as the man who had been taking her and Robin's photos on the day that Robin went missing. Later on that day, two other witnesses from the beach, the girls that Alcala had been photographing roller skating, picked Alcala's face out of a photo lineup, identifying him as the man who had been taking pictures of them without their permission on either June 19th or June 20th. With this information, officers begin diving into Rodney Alcala's background, learning about his rape and attempted murder of Tali Shapiro, being found with a 13-year-old girl in 1974 smoking marijuana, along with the sexual assault of Monique Hoyt a few months prior. The problem was that even though officers suspected that Alcala was the man responsible for abducting Robin, they did not have any physical evidence to conclusively prove this, which I know that sounds kind of ridiculous considering the fact that they have multiple eyewitnesses stating that Alcala had been at the beach that day. He's got this track record of sexual assaults on underage girls, etc. In order to get an arrest warrant or a warrant to search Rodney Alcala's residence or vehicle, there has to be some form of physical evidence with which they can link Alcala with Robin. The first piece of this evidence comes on July 1st of 1979 when a fire prevention team discovered the badly decomposed and animal-ravaged body of Robin Christine Samso. At first, this fire prevention team assumed that the body was that of an animal until they inspected it closer and realized that the skeletonalized face was actually a human skull, at which point they contact the Sierra Madre Police Department. Officers on the scene quickly set up a perimeter and they began finding evidence. A blood-stained rock was found next to Robin's body, a cane-cut brand stainless steel kitchen knife, along with a bloody beach towel. More was found, however, as roughly 20 feet from where Robin's body and this other evidence was discovered, a single blue and yellow canvas tennis shoe, what used to be called a beach shoe, was found. Alcala, apparently after everything had happened, he'd attempted to go back to the crime scene. His ego had taken over, and he had decided that he did not need to go back and gather up any of the evidence that might tie him to this murder, and had simply gone about his life. Officers with the Sierra Madre Police Department began looking through the missing persons reports for the state, and in doing so they came across the missing person report for Robin, which listed her shoes, and upon seeing this, officers immediately reached out to the Huntington Beach Police Department. Obviously, they aren't able to identify Robin's remains right away. However, officers strongly suspect that this is unfortunately Robin who has been discovered, and upon inspecting the shoe, they learn that someone has used a ballpoint pen to write Robin and Ralph on the side of the shoe's sole. After speaking with Robin's mother, the officers in charge of investigating Robin's disappearance learned that there was a boy in school that Robin had had a crush on by the name of Ralph. Further confirming their speculation, the blood found at the crime scene is found to match that of Robin type A. The coroner's office is closed due to the 4th of July holiday, and Robin's autopsy officially is not conducted until July 6th, at which point, using dental records, it is learned that the body is indeed that of 12-year-old Robin Christine Samso. This news story is broadcast all over Los Angeles County, eventually reaching Rodney Alcala. We know that he purchased a knife similar to the one that was left at the scene of Robin's murder from a local pawn shop. Some sources have it that Alcala already had a storage locker in Seattle, Washington at this point. Others that he went and rented it immediately after the story of Robin's remains being found broke. Be aware, though, this isn't what we consider a storage locker. That is what is always stated that it was, is it's just a storage locker. It's really a 25-foot storage unit that Alcala brought not only the various pictures and articles that he had taken from his victims, but also mundane things such as winter clothing and unneeded kitchenware. We do know with certainty, though, that on or around the period of time that all of this is taking place, that Alcala was in Seattle, that he did in fact go to this storage unit, and also that he had rented a motel. And while he's fearful of being discovered, he's not so fearful that he does not return to Los Angeles, unaware that the Huntington Beach Police Department has confirmed with Alcala's former probation officer that he has an affinity for young girls and enjoys taking pictures of them in the midst of his sexual assaults. They are able to proceed in getting a search warrant for Alcala's house as well as his Datsun, which they execute in the early morning hours of July 24th. When officers bust into Rodney Alcala's apartment, they find him asleep in his bedroom. Alcala is placed under arrest for suspicion in the murder of Robin Samso. Because Alcala is living in Los Angeles, first he has to go to the local police precinct before eventually being transferred to the Orange County Jail, where his bail is set at $250,000. In the search of Alcala's apartment, a number of items were seized, including a complete set of cane-cut knives, magazines containing images of child pornography, a receipt for a storage locker in Seattle, Washington. Inside of Alcala's station wagon, officers seize his camera, which is located inside of his glove compartment, along with other photographic equipment, a pair of binoculars, street maps, along with evidence to suggest that the passenger side carpet in the station wagon had been replaced. It should be noted at this point, though, that even with all of this information, officers do not have enough evidence to really charge Alcala. Even though they had placed him under arrest under suspicions of having committed the murder, there simply is not enough there to realistically move forward with charges and a trial. One piece of evidence that they'd been hoping to find, they quickly learned during the course of their investigation, was no longer available to them, and that was the bicycle that Robin had been riding on when she went missing on June 20th. As, if you'll recall, Alcala had dropped it behind a pawn shop, while the owner of the pawn shop had picked the bike up and sold it in the days following its discovery. On the night of July 24th, 1979, Rodney Alcala's sister comes to the Orange County Jail, where Rodney Alcala informs his sister that he can give her $500 if she'll do a few things for him. First, he needs her to get him some sleeping pills, ostensibly to get rid of night terrors that Alcala claims he is experiencing. He then wants his sister to travel to Seattle to a storage locker where she will find a cardboard box filled with photographs as well as a red jewelry pouch. He asks his sister to take both of these items, put them inside of a briefcase that is underneath his bed that contains the $500 that Rodney has saved, along with 2 padlock keys that belong to the storage locker that he has. Neither Alcala or his sister are aware, however, that the police recorded this conversation and were already in possession of the briefcase that Alcala had stored under his bed. The following morning, officers working the Robin Samso murder fly to Seattle and accessed the storage locker, inside of which they found over 1,000 photographs depicting men, women, as well as children in various poses, some of them innocuous, many of them in extremely sexually explicit poses. Now, in addition to these photographs, officers also discover negatives as well as slides. Now, for those not aware, slides are a smaller version of a photograph, really a negative of the photograph that was put inside of a cardboard sleeve that could then be inserted into a overhead projector that could then be shown to other people. Most of my listeners who are, over 40 years of age will be familiar with these types of slides, as they were subjected to seeing them during their school years in various classes such as health and biology, things like that. They're very popular in schools back in the day. They're, to the best of my knowledge, no longer in use. Now, in with these photos, officers find numerous pictures of Monique Hoyt, who would later testify against Rodney Alcala. There were not, however, any photographs of Robin present in this cache. Instead, officers had to take the jewelry bag containing all of the earrings and speak with Robin's mother in the hopes that she could identify some piece of jewelry inside of the bag as belonging to her daughter. Marianne Fraser is able to identify a pair of gold ball earrings as having belonged to her daughter, and is further able to state that her daughter had been wearing them on the day of June 20th, when Robin went missing. When officers questioned Miss Fraser as to how she could be certain that the earrings had belonged to Robin, she informed them that they were not in fact her daughter's, they had been hers. She then is able to show the officers holes in the earrings where a small piece of metal wire had once been, which was used to hold charms. Miss Fraser states that one of the charms had fallen off the earring, and she had used a pair of nail clippers to cut the other charm away, at which point she allowed her 12-year-old daughter to begin wearing them. Alcala's first hearing took place on July 26th. Alcala enters a not guilty plea, at which point the judge informs him that the next preliminary hearing will take place on August 9th, and that Alcala will be held without bail until that time. What happens next has been the matter of some speculation, and at least on the part of Rodney Alcala, as being something that never took place. Alcala is reported to have confessed his crimes to 3 inmates on the night of July 26th. Now, according to the statements that were later given, Alcala was in the mess hall with 3 other inmates when they lured him into a conversation concerning the murder of Robin Samso. Alcala told these men that he had taken pictures of the 2 girls that day, but that wasn't a crime. And according to one of the men, when Alcala was asked about riding the yellow bicycle that Robin had, Alcala responded by informing him that he had never ridden the bicycle. It had simply been on the back seat of his car. According to all 3 men, Alcala said something along the lines of, "She cried when I asked her if she had ever posed nude, and I slapped the shit out of her. This was before she was dead. As to how she died, you idiots will never fucking know." Now, according to these 3 men, the more they peppered Alcala with false information, the more upset he became. And in doing so, he began to spill facts to them that only the man responsible for the crime would know. And because of this, they kept on him until they got the entire story from Alcala. Obviously, these inmates are going to come forward to authorities and inform them of what it is Alcala has told them. Alcala is unaware, however, that this is going to happen, just as he is unaware that one of the workers who had discovered Robin's body had gone to authorities to let them know that she had seen a blue Datsun station wagon on the road leading to where Robin's body had been discovered on some night in June. When pressed as to how she knew the year and model of the car, she informed them that she had had a similar vehicle and that the year 1975 was the last year Datsun had made that station wagon. That doesn't make sense to you. I'll quickly explain it. Cars are manufactured the year before they're released, so a car that came out in 1976 would actually have been manufactured in 1975. At first, she's not able to give a date as to when it happened. However, after going home and going through her personal effects, this woman, whose name was Dana Crappa, found a check that she had written on June 21st. She said she had gone to a local 7-Eleven on that date to buy groceries, but that she also recalled she had seen the car the previous day on the 20th when she was driving home from work that afternoon. She informed the officers that on that date of June 20th, she had witnessed a dark-haired man leading a blonde girl up into the woods. However, she was unable to positively identify the man as being Rodney Alcala, nor the girl as Robin Samso. Miss Crappa stated that she had seen the man dragging the girl up into the woods and had assumed that it had been a father who was going to reprimand his daughter. However, when she saw the car the following day, on the evening of the 21st, something about it freaked her out. She had gone back to the spot on June 25th and parked her car there. And this is when things get really disturbing. Miss Crappa then informs the officers that she had gotten out of her car and walked up into the woods, and in fact had seen Robin's body lying there half buried. Dana Crappa informs the officer that when she first saw the body it was intact, and that it appeared to her as though the throat had been cut and her face had been bashed in. According to Officer Jenkins' notes, at this point Miss Crappa pretty much became hysterical, and it was decided that they would take a 10-minute break, after which he informed her that he was going to have to record the rest of their conversation. When asked why she had not come forward earlier with this information, as Dana had seen Robin's body roughly a week before it was officially discovered, Dana informs Officer Jenkins that she has had a lot of traumatic events in her life, and as a result, sometimes when a traumatic experience occurs, she suffers from short-term memory loss. Informing Jenkins that she had not recalled most of what took place until that very morning before she came into the police station. When pressed as to why she did not contact police that day, Dana states that she was terrified and did not know what to do, so instead she had gone home, drunken a bottle of wine, and passed out in an attempt to forget what it was that she had seen. He then learns that a few days after this, on roughly June 29th, Dana and one of the men that she worked with had been in the area and had come across the body again. However, the man she was with was unable to see the head and has assumed that it was a animal body, and thus, with this idea in his mind, he had picked up what Dana believed to be one of Robin's arm bones and threw it at her. Now, according to Dana, this was something that the people she worked with often did, picking up dead animal parts and throwing it at one another as a sort of joke. However, Dana said that when this man threw the arm at her, she completely wigged out on him and became hysterical. She then informs the officer that she went back again later that evening with a flashlight, at which point she confirmed to herself that it was in fact a human body. She also stated that she had seen the knife, the blood-stained towel, as well as the tennis shoe. Officer Jenkins then asks Miss Crappa why she had not contacted police at that point, to which Miss Crappa replies, quote, "I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I was horrified. I mean, what if I had stopped on that day when I had seen the man with the blue dots and dragging the blonde girl up that path? Perhaps I could have prevented her murder and she would still be alive today. Jenkins, we don't know that for sure, Dana. Crappa, I'm just saying, you know. Jenkins, have you told anyone else about this? Dana, no, only you. Jenkins, any more secrets? Crappa, no, the rest you already know. That William and I came across the skeleton again on July the 2nd in bright sunlight, and then notified our super, who in turn called the Sierra Madre police station. In order to confirm the story that he was being told, Officer Jenkins goes and reads the statement that Dana's partner had given on July 2nd, which read, quote, "We found the body 10 feet northeast from marker 11. We had observed remains at the same location on June 29th at approximately 3:30 p.m., but at that time the skull was not present, and I thought the torso was that of a dead deer." When Alcala ends up going in for the pre-trial hearing, he is informed that his lawyer is stepping down as two of the inmates that he had spoken to on the night of July 26th have gone forward to the police with the confession that he has given, and that his attorney is representing both of these individuals in unrelated cases. We're going to be getting into the whole sordid legal drama of Rodney Alcala in the next episode. Before I leave it for this week, I do want to say that he is officially charged with kidnapping and murder. The charges against him concerning Monique Hoyt, however, are at this point postponed, as Monique is ordered to undergo a psychological evaluation, which means that she is not going to be able to testify against Rodney Alcala. Rodney Alcala's trial for the murder of Robin Samso began on March 6th of 1980, and that is where we will pick up next week. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this episode, and I look forward to any feedback that you have regarding it. Until next time, stay morbid.